the action sign.
Oh,
But
good.
you're not in a picture. There we go.
Oh, great. Okay. Alrighty, so we're carrying on from where Calliope left off. Excuse me. Just gonna. Now, I'm gonna try. Like it's always hard when I have to talk about discipleship because it's like one of those things where, you know, someone asks you, breathe, explain to me how you breathe, and I'd be like, breathe in and then breathe out. You know what I mean? It's like that's how you live. So like I guess like for me, like the whole journey pretty much started there, and that's sort of all I've known. So, but anyway, I'll try and talk about the most recent things that I do remember quite well, and one of them is the matter of dealing with one's identity. Now, I never knew and understood that, and this is, I suppose, the part where discipleship is very, very, very helpful in the sense that there are things that are sort of constantly there, but you're never aware of them. So you're somewhat living in ignorance to things that are actually destroying you, but you can't figure those things out by yourself. So in my case, like, you know, being in discipleship means you have people that can actually sort of point out certain things and sort of open your eyes to things that you yourself can't see. So like those blind spots of how you act, how you talk, under certain conditions if something's happening. So I think that's the first main thing is like having that sort of like, you know, life on life relationship with people that do genuinely know you, that do, I guess, you know, you could say they do understand you and they know who you are, basically means that they're able to see things within you or in you that you're not aware of them. They're able to point out things that you yourself either can't see them or you're just not wanting to see them, you know, like you're just preferring to ignore them. But the next, probably like the most significant thing, because like it's one thing to see a problem, it's something entirely different to be able to deal with the problem. So like I think like one of the most significant parts of discipleship is having someone that actually sort of does hold your hand in that journey and actually say, you can do this. And more than that, it's like, you have to do this. Like, not like we're making you do it, but it's like, you need to be able to get through these things. But they're not sort of like throwing you in and say, okay, look, we've told you a problem, go figure this out. But it's like, you know, like we can journey with you through this, and we're here for you at all times, and we want to help you through this. We want to hold your hand and sort of lead you in this path to sort of help you. So that's dealing with identity, help you sort of reach that level of wholeness that on your own you might be able to get there, but it would take you a very, very long time, and you'll make the journey a whole lot more painful than what it already is, I suppose. So that's the first main thing. The next thing, but I guess like this is how I think, so you know, we could be different, but I think like in the Christian life, there's really only two ways that one lives their life. It's either you're going forward or you're going back. You know, so if you're ever in a stage where you're not going forward, you're never really staying in the same place. You know, it's like, oh, I'm quite content to be where I'm at now. It's like, no, actually, you're now going back. You know, so it's like,
as time goes on,
there's constantly another level for you to be able to grow into and to be able where God actually wants to take you. So you never really reach the level where, you know, God says, okay, my work with you is done. You know what I mean? It's like there's constantly another height for you to be able to reach into. And that's another, and now I remember this quite clearly because this was only a few months ago for me, so I'm like, okay. But that's another part in discipleship where you have people that not only know you well, but they also know your potential to do well, as in they understand and they know that there's so much more that you can live up to and that you can actually reach instead of you remaining within just that level of being content and being comfortable, because you sort of reach that place where you're quite comfortable, you're quite happy with the state that you find yourself in, where it's like you're not stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone. You're like, you know, this is a good place to be in. I'm with good friends, with good people, I'm doing good Christian things. But you're not aspiring to greater things as to what God actually wants to do. So like within a discipleship relationship, it sort of allows, it's just like the hard part, because it's like I know what I'm trying to get at, but it's really hard to be able to communicate that in a way that makes sense, because it's like you, I was talking with Nia about this, and what she was saying to me is like, Brig, the reason why we sort of talk to you about these things and sort of ask you to deal with these things is because we know the potential that you have and the type of person that you can become. So it's not like the pressure or the expectation to live up to a certain height, but it's more actually for you to be able to recognize that and see what they're seeing, that again, it's like you can't see it, but they can see the potential of what you can get up to. So essentially it's like, it works in both ways, it's like you have the identity side of things where they're showing you the bad things that could potentially destroy your life, but also there's another side of it where they're helping you see a much bigger picture that you yourself are not quite seeing clearly, where it's sort of like it's a bit blurry to you, but to them it's fairly clear, and they're actually encouraging you to aspire to that and to be able to see that a lot clearer and to be able to take a hold of that instead of wanting to remain stagnant and contained in your own little world, I suppose. But anyway, I think that's the best I could possibly explain that. So anyway, Kelly, if you think you can go on from here.
If we're going to do 2 weeks, do you want to get Kelly to share a dream next week? Okay, where are we up to then?
Yeah.
Okay, it's anyone heard of Michelangelo? Hey, Michelangelo, when are you going to finish? When he was painting the Sistine Chapel, well, he's best known as a sculptor, and he was sculptor marbles. And there's a few very famous statues that are actually angels. One here, one there, for this particular chapel. And when they were asking him about how do you go about sculpturing, and he says, well, it's easy really. Every block of marble has contained within it a statue. So first of all, I saw the angel in the marble, and I simply carved to set it free. And sculpturing is easy. You simply just chisel down to the skin and stop there. So you can only say that if you actually genuinely see the angel in that block of marble. And that's a really good picture of discipleship that Brig was talking about, is seeing what God sees. It's discipleship is all about learning to work with God as He works with souls. He has His own way. He has His own timing. As soon as you boil things down to full-on straight method, you're going to miss God. Like, for instance, I don't know if you know, let's just talk about some of you guys that have walked with us a bit. Now, a lot of you have dealt with or have been dealing with identity. Now, I don't know if you realise that we just put that teaching out there amongst you, and it became common knowledge and common understanding. Like for Brig, that was common knowledge and common understanding for about 2 years in the community he was with. And he would just, you know what I mean? And then God in His providence then says, it's time now. And we were with someone this morning and they said, I get it. I get what you mean when you say the word context. I've got that now. You know what I mean? It's like, now's the time I have to deal with this. I can't avoid it. It's the only way forward now. And sort of God brought that about, but there was an environment created, and that environment, God used that in His own way, in His own timing, through His own circumstances, and said, for you, it's time. And for a while ago, in the last year, God said to Brig, for you, it's time. Now we have context. And Brig goes, ah! Okay, you didn't go. I know, I put those words in your mouth. That's because I'm here and you can't do anything about it. And so and it encompasses all of life. So it's not like we just make these preaching heads. Does that make sense? which is this mouth that moves and preaches the gospel, and it's on a stick. You know what I mean? It's not a whole person.
Oh, man.
Do you like that analogy, Mel? And so, you know, basically, God is interested in the whole person, their capacity to be in relationship, their capacity to love, their capacity to overlook offence. Also, he fixes up their gender, their masculinity, their femininity. He fixes up their personality. He balances their personality out. He balances out their social skills and their abilities. He then fills out their living skills so they can get by in life in every area, finance and self-discipline and health and, you know what I mean, and exercise. There's not one area that he doesn't touch, and discipleship involves the whole person. And it's not just bringing your agenda to, oh, you're my disciple now, I bring you my agenda. It's watching God carefully as he works in this person's life. And life has seasons, and you're watching their seasons. And growth starts here and goes there incrementally, and you're aware of where they're at. And you're watching, you're listening, and you're getting educated by you've got no idea how much you discover God talking to a person from their own mouth. And they don't know. You're really just translating for them. You're interpreting God for them, but they're the ones that are actually telling you. You're just rearranging it, put it on the blackboard, and they're going, aha! But it was quite plain. And then they go, I can see that's exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's saying. Now I can cooperate. So you're just connecting them with God. And something really beautiful happens when they have that person just to hold their hand and assist them. So look, we've worked with Melody for a few years now. And so, you know, Melody, if she had her own way, would just want to talk about the souls that she's preaching to. Who knows Mel? Yes? Yes, okay. All right, okay. Well, Mel doesn't always get to talk about that. She gets to talk about stuff she'd probably rather not talk about, you know what I mean? And it's just funny seeing the Lord be her father and fill her out in every area of her life. So let's just, Mel, I'll let you share from now.
Yeah, sure, great. Yeah, it really is all of life. When you follow the Lord, you walk with the Lord, and you start walking with people who are wise, people who are mature, you start walking that direction. The Lord does bring everything together for his glory. He made us, he created us with body, with our soul, with our spirit. Everything is for him. And so he loves it all. He wants everything to flourish. And so that's how the Lord worked in my life. So with discipleship, originally, of course, you know, in the very beginning, you don't know the Lord. And I came to this zone of receiving discipleship from a completely different background, which many here relate to, where this wasn't our normal before, this wasn't our habit. We didn't grow up with Jesus. So I had these mindsets, these thoughts, and I was walking with them. I did life by these mindsets. I did life by these thoughts. And so then meeting Paul and Roz, originally it was just that important, huge change of knowing Jesus. So after really knowing Jesus, of course then the next huge shift of receiving the Holy Spirit on me. So having the Holy Spirit, all of that is huge. So for me, my mind's blown. I'm thinking, this is huge. Already my life is completely changed. This is it. But, you know, at that time, I didn't even imagine how much more, how the Lord wanted to continue with it. So originally, it was just knowing Jesus, really knowing him. That's discipleship, to really know him, to have the Holy Spirit. To really get, in a situation of obeying the Lord. So after living your whole life in rebellion, originally it's just you need to learn how to obey the Lord. You haven't been obeying him all your life. It's not your habit. You got to learn how to obey him. But also, originally in that first, let's say, year or year and a half, it was so much very difficult process of getting healing with identity. So that was very intense, where often, you come to receive discipleship and I'm crying and I'm emotional and I go home and every time I'm like, do I want to do this? Yes, I want to do this. I want to obey the Lord. I want to follow the Lord. So a lot of courage in those early years of, I am not going to pull away. I'm going to receive correction. You know what I mean? I'm going to receive the truth. I'm going to take the truth. This is what I want. I'm not going back to that way. So originally it was intense, where it was soul being healed and being set free from all those issues, right? And getting freedom and everything. But then through that whole process, coming out of that, lessening it a little bit, came very practical sides and practical ways of discipleship. The Lord just wants to work in every area. So the very practical thing came up of time to move out of home, time to do that. So practical of Melody, how about doing this to get some work? You can go for this and it's up to you, but why not? And so then that thought came to my mind of, I can actually take what these people who are discipling me say, I can take that seriously and actually do it. Or just be like, no, like, Paul and Rosie don't understand. Like, it's hard for me. And kind of stay in the zone of self-pity. There was constantly this choice of, Melody, what do you want? With discipleship, what do you want? Do you want to obey the Lord? Do you want to follow the Lord? What is this all about for you? But the Lord's love is so great because through the difficulty and through the challenge, there came such a transformation by following him, by obeying him. So moving out of home, starting university, which before it wasn't part of my thought that I could do that, but starting university, super practical things. Daily walking with Jesus. What does this look like to obey the Lord and to follow the Lord? And for me personally, and because it's so much in the Bible, I know that this is what the Lord wants for every one of his people. I've received so much blessing from walking with the wise. There is such a blessing in that. We are so crazy blessed to have people around us who are more mature than us. Whoever they are, whoever the Lord has put in your life that is teaching you, that you are learning from. There's such a blessing in walking in that way. So everything started to come together with, so for example, very practical things of university and our relationships with people. Just learning how to be comfortable in my own skin was so huge. And these kind of things are quite difficult to talk about because they're an area of weakness. And so, as we all know, it's really easy to just try to hone on our strengths and just think, well, this is what I'm good at, and that kind of part I'm not going to touch that part of my life. I'm just going to leave that. But the Lord really wants to work on those things that are places where we're not flourishing, places where old habits are in, or places where we're just not growing. Jesus wants to work on those things, and if it weren't for the people who disciple me, I wouldn't have those things worked on at all. They would just be so much my place of pain, where whenever that situation comes up, the issues come up and, oh, never mind, I'm just struggling, and you get into your self-pity. It's like, okay, never mind, I just need to forget about this and just need to keep praying, keep reading the Bible. But we are so blind until the Lord brings it to our attention, and often he does that through people. There's a reason he always encourages us to walk with the wise. So the Lord worked on so many areas, is still working on so many areas. Started working on just my conversations with people. So, for example, early on with me growing with the Lord, I would walk into a room and just immediately feel tense and uncomfortable. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, panic, panic, panic. What are we going to do? Who is a safe person? Who accepts me? Who doesn't mind my weirdness? Okay, is there anybody here who's safe? Just somebody give me a hug. Where are you? And it's just such a panic, such an insecurity in that sense. And such a feeling of there's something wrong with me, I'm just messed up, I'm just weird. And the whole time I think in my mind, look, there's nothing wrong with this thinking. It's the truth. Like, I really am messed up and weird. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the truth. But in fact, that's not what it means to be a daughter of God. So with discipleship, the Lord brings his truth to really every area as you come to him. So through discipleship, through understanding the Lord's truth more, started to realize, no, the Lord has created me. I'm his daughter. He is teaching me. He is growing me. The Lord wants me to be comfortable in my own skin so that I can flourish as his daughter and live out his purpose and live out his calling with peace. So the Lord wants that. He is so much in that line. With many of us, we've got certain things where we didn't realize it, just like what Brig was saying. I related a lot to what you said, bro, that until somebody mentions it, it's not really seen or known. And with many of us, it's like that. Paul was saying about how the Lord starts working on, our identity as a man, our identity as a woman, what that means, what that looks like. All these things are, for me personally, when it comes to these certain things like femininity, being a woman, what that looks like. For me, part of the journey was the way I dressed, whether or not I wore makeup, what kind of makeup I wore. These kind of things were so strange and vulnerable for me. But the Lord wanted to bring such a freedom, such a healing, such a growth. So I didn't think this was part of following the Lord, but it is. It actually is. So learning to see myself the way that God sees me. All of these things, if it was just my own understanding, I would think that's not really important. Like, if I had it my way, I'd be just a spirit who went around and just told people about the Lord and didn't have to worry about this.
That's why you laugh about the preaching up on the stick.
Yeah, because that would be great. But before, just do the work. Like, just do the work. But Jesus really wants to work on us as a whole. And we have too many blind spots for him to get what he wants if it's just us. We have too many blind spots. The Lord wants to reveal the stuff that we don't know, and he does it through people. And a big reason I found in my own journey that he does it through people is it teaches us humility. Because if we're finding this stuff out by ourselves before we know it, oh gosh, I'm just amazing, I'm so wise, I do this all by myself. But there isn't the humility that comes from recognizing the people the Lord's given in your life. And so that's another huge thing. It's very core, but I still want to mention it and emphasize it, that the humility that comes from being in discipleship and actually opening your heart to correction, that humility is salvation. For me, anyway, has been for me. So the humility is huge. We are so caught up on ourselves, we don't even see the gifts that the Lord has given us of the people around us to, like Roz has something I really like where it's like sandpaper, right? That they fully take away our rough spots and they make us smooth. They make us the way the Lord wanted us always to be. For me personally, just learning to respect and love and honor the advice, the correction, the suggestion, the recommendation from Roz is huge. Like, I fully honor the way the Lord has put someone like Roz into my life. With each one of us, the Lord's put people in our lives for that goal to make us like Him. So for me personally, I'm on the way to becoming like Him. And I wouldn't be the way I am today if not for discipleship. At the moment, there's still so many practical things of health, living skills, and these certain things like managing the practicalities of life. But the Lord, He works on us as we let Him. And He gives us people who are more mature than us, confronting us with their lives. And we can choose to step into that challenge and say, I really want to grow. I really want this discipleship. I'm keen for it. I want the Lord to make me like Him. And it's not about latching onto a person, because really, when we do that, the person will be like, latch on to Jesus. Don't latch on to me. We don't want to latch onto a person, but we want to latch onto Jesus and love, respect, and honor discipleship the Lord has given us. Did I miss certain parts?
No, yeah, that was good. And the Lord, obviously, you missed out your hair.
Yeah.
You should have seen the way Mel used to have her hair. Seriously, until she discovered God gave her that hair not to hide.
Yes.
And so it's just...
Yes.
It's just every area of our lives, He leaves no stone unturned. And I think it's a wonderful thing to have people in your corner that love you. It's like, I don't know, discipleship, I think, is really about correction and rebuke. It's there, but it's just having someone that actually, as Brig said, someone who sees more in you than you see in yourself. And they call it out. And if they see greatness, most good disciples aren't giving you false praise and positivity. They're genuinely seeing what God sees. And it takes a long time for that to seep into you. And so when I've seen other people discipling in our midst, and for us, Ning and Phil, they're honestly seeing really good things. And it's God that's put those things into you. And you by yourself won't call that out. And therefore you won't grow into it. You get stunted. And that's what I think you were trying to say as well. So it's God's way. It really is. And when you understand it, there's like... If you can't make discipleship happen by your will, I'm going to make this happen. It's almost a mystical, strange thing when you see it really happen effectively. It is when one heart opens and another heart opens. You know the word, the Hebrew word for honour, like Mel's talked about honour, Callie talked about honour. And when to choose to honour someone, first of all, recognising God has placed them in my life. Therefore, it's important. So you're not trying to... It's not utilitarian. It's not, I want to grow, you'll help me grow. You know what I mean? It's recognising God in the relationship. Somehow I can sense Him or see Him in this connection. And because He's in it, I'm in it. And it really is based upon the fear of the Lord, where you want what He wants and you want to grow and you want to become like Him. And the whole love for God that He put in your heart is really the driver in the whole thing. And you're just seeing God, and that part of you is magnetically drawn towards this person. They're calling out the best in you. You're seeing that they really love the Lord. You're seeing that they really want to live a laid down life. They're not perfect, but you're seeing reality. They're seeing honesty. It's not fabricated. It's, you know what I mean? There's a degree of health in them. And it's, I want what you've got type of thing. And so you find yourself, not I want you, but you're magnetically drawn. Does that make sense? And when that happens, your heart opens. Now, just imagine your heart opening, and there's just like this now, there's this, imagine this little, it's created like a hole or a vortex, And in another person, say the person that God's got there on the other side of that, the more mature one, and if their heart opens, if their heart doesn't open, nothing happens. But if their heart opens, then God almost, can you imagine this conduit, like a tube? Weird analogy, I know. Imagine a tube between the two hearts. God does something through that tube. And it's hard to explain it, but discipleship is a spiritual thing, not just a relational thing. So when two hearts open, and when that younger heart's heart opens, the only way it can open is they give up their independence. And they humble themselves. And they give honour. The word for honour in Hebrew is the word kabod, which means a heavy rock. So have you ever heard someone say something that's really profound and wise? And what do you normally say? That's really... They had a lot of weight. They spoke with authority, not as the scribes and Pharisees. I don't know why. I see that in their life. And when they say it, it has substance to it. It has reality to it. And so that's you recognising you give honour. And so when you honour a person, it allows a conduit by which the good things that God has placed upon them or given them actually travels to you through that conduit. So it's a heart thing. You can't just make it happen. Your heart has to open. And that humbling, I'll give up my independence. To be connected to another person, it can get messy. People make mistakes, you know what I mean? Not only that, it's like young disciples are often in self-pity. When they're in self-pity, there's this like self-bubble and they're not aware of like, I can't believe it, you didn't recognise me. Sorry. You know what I mean? But then God deals with that and they get back on track, and this whole, like I said, it's just mess and pain at first. But you know what? Most people are stuck in their mess and pain for like 20 or 30 years.
True.
As Christians on their own. And they're the majority. So here's a question for you. If you're not in discipleship, do you want to be one of them? Because on your own, I'm going to put it out there, you're heading for it. You're heading for it. Because this is the normal road. On your own, an attendee, a worker, but alone. Growing, going forward, coming back, but growing ever so slowly, but really just on this flat plateau. And all that God intended for you is not being drawn out and not being drawn into it. So how are we going with time? 20 more minutes? Okay, well, I think it'd be good to... Who are we on to? Carol? Jeremy?
Me?
Jeremy and Annie? Yeah. So Jeremy's just going to... What are some of the benefits that have come to you, Jeremy? To you?
Come up.
For the sake of the video,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Cool. So,
You've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes. So I think like...
If you start repeating, we're going to cut you.
Also, I'm not going to repeat. So I think the first place to start would be like, well, I'm going to talk about responsibility, and so I guess going back probably to last year, I remember, I think it was with you, Paul. I was sitting outside, and I remember, I guess first of all I was being discipled, and then I was actually, well, obviously I've been discipled for a while, but then I guess you sort of come to a stage where it's like, you know, you have to grow up. And I think the words that you said was, you know, the Peter Pan has to come out of you. Everyone who knows who Peter Pan is. But I think like there was this real fear in me of actually almost wanting to grow up in a way. Like I was actually comfortable at home with my parents and comfortable, you know, being discipled and, you know, like doing all these things. And there was almost this fear of not wanting to step out and not wanting to sort of, go any further. And so, and so I was kind of like, and I had this, in my mind, I was kind of like, like, what do I even want to do, career-wise? What do I even want to do, like, just long-term, and what does that look like? And I remember, I think you've said it to me quite a few times, I remember you saying, like, God actually can't steer a parked car. And that, like, and I was just like, I don't know why I was so fearful, but, like, I guess I was waiting for ages just for God to be like, just waiting on God, like, God, you'll show me the way and you'll actually show me what it is that you want me to do. And so, like, I was waiting and I was waiting and I was waiting, but I realised, like, I wasn't really trusting in God, because, like, I wasn't really willing to step out and try anything. And so I had these few sort of things that I wanted to do, and then, like, it was really interesting because, like, as I sort of, because eventually I was just like, Lord, I'm going to trust you with this. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to step out and actually believe that, I'll try this, and then if you don't want me to do it, then you'll show me that you don't want me to do it. And so, but it was really interesting because, like, as soon as I stepped, like, this is probably heading towards the end of last year, like, as soon as I sort of stepped out, God just massively accelerated everything in my life. Like, well, I don't say everything, most things, a lot of things in my life. Like I had a couple of career things that I wanted to do, and so I was like, I'm just going to try one, and if God does want me to do it, then He'll sort of show me that. And then there's the whole thing of, even things like, I guess you guys, a lot of you guys know about, like, I've had a problem with my foot for the last sort of years, so, like, it's like, I've had to learn how to sort of be responsible for cooking and all that sort of stuff. And then at the beginning of this year, I moved out of home as well, so it's kind of like everything just sort of happened as I was like, Lord, I trust you, and I took that step out. And then, so that was really cool. And then, what else did I have? Yeah, so I think, like, God really just steered me where He wanted to go, and, like, just took me where He wanted to go, but, like, He did it really, really fast. Like, even with my job, I was just like, got in touch with a couple of guys, and then, like, I was just, all of a sudden, I'm just doing this, I mean, it's not paid work, but, like, work experience and stuff, which is really, really cool. And, like, God was just, like, moving so fast. And then, so that was cool. I guess, so the last few months is sort of just learning to take responsibility for myself. And then there came a time of actually God sort of challenging me, like, what is it? Similar to what Mel was saying. What is it you actually want for your life? And actually realising that God has bigger things than myself, and God actually wants to, what is my life worth? And so, I think I was talking to Paul again a while ago, and I was just like, similar to what we were talking about last week, like, what is God's will, and, like, what is your life worth, and what is your destiny, and, like, what is it you really want? And so, like, I actually thought about that for a while, and I was just like, God, because I guess, like, I was in a place where I was actually like, I'm taking responsibility for myself, like, God, this is good, you know what I mean? Like, everything's going well and all that sort of stuff. But it was actually like, it was still, I guess, like, I was taking responsibility for myself, but my life was still about me, and, like, I knew that God had so much more. But, like we were talking about before, like, it actually required me to actually lay down my own life and realise that God's, I guess, giving up my life for the things of God, and actually realising that, the things that He has are not earthly but from heaven. And so it was really cool, and I guess, like, God, it's like, God, you saved me. It's like, what is it you actually want? And, like, I guess, God, God wants the thing He died for, which is souls. And so it's like, as soon as I guess I was thinking for a while, like, God, what do you want, such and such. I was just praying. I was just like, God, I sort of thought it through. God, I want your will to be done in me. And it's like, and I thought that was already happening, but I actually realised like there's still a lot of me in me, you know what I mean? And so, and the crazy thing was like, as soon as I sort of made that decision, God actually, like this wasn't even that long ago, like God actually started, like within like a few days, God actually started bringing like all these guys into mine and Briggs' life anyway. Like it was just like, we were catching up with these guys almost daily, like Chris for an example, like I remember we met Chris at the beginning of the year, and like it's just been really cool sort of watching Chris's journey, and but like like I said before, like it's actually just giving yourself to, I guess it's so really satisfying to give yourself to the things of the Lord. Like it's actually because He places things inside of you that, you know, God placed inside of Jesus, and it's the life that actually is the heavenly life. And so, what else did I have down here? Yeah, and so I think like to discipleship, like God's definitely brought me to a place now where like, you know, I'm still very much learning, and I'm still, you know, being discipled, but like at the same time He's actually teaching me what it looks like to you know, have my own sons and like brothers, and it's like you actually see the cost of that, because like you actually do, you know, it does. I guess one thing I've learned is, you know, you do have to manage your time better, and you do have to, it does cost money, and it's like, as Greg would probably say, it costs food as well. But like,
if it's less than $10,000 a soul, you're doing well.
And so, but like, I think like God has been continually teaching me, like, you know, when you give yourself to the purposes of the Lord, like, your time does become more precious, and you know, you actually do become wise, and you do need more wisdom. And so it's actually, even though like you're discipling someone else, you still need the Lord just as much as you did before.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, and so like, it's been cool watching, you know, with Chris and the other guys, sort of Theo and a few of the other guys we've sort of been seeing. But again, like as I sort of made that decision, God just accelerated everything, which is really, really, really cool. And what else have I written down here? How am I doing for time?
No one timed you.
Okay, cool, alright.
8 minutes to 9.
8 minutes to 9, okay.
7 minutes to 9.
You gotta leave something behind.
Yeah, but I think just going back though, like to sort of talking about the whole thing of actually the cost, like it actually compares nothing to the reward that you actually did. Like it's because like I guess you're seeing God transform people, and it's just like the most satisfying thing, and sort of like I guess like for example, like even like just seeing someone like Chris, like, you know, didn't know God at all, but like you can actually see God teaching him every day, and God actually doing work in him, and it's actually, and yeah, it's like the most satisfying thing. It's kind of like as you give up your life, God gives you treasures that are beyond the things of the earth, and it's kind of like, you know, and so I think for me, like it's really been a season of acceleration, and really just, you know, Lord, what is it you want? And as soon as you sort of do that, you actually, you know, you do pay a price, but you get bigger reward back. And so I think I had a couple of other things I sort of quickly say before you come up, Hannah. Where was it? There was something here. Yeah, I didn't mind.
That's
It's
the next thing
good.
we're talking about.
Okay,
is
yeah.
running the right
No,
notes.
okay. I must have. I don't know what it was, but like.
Journaling.
What did you do?
No.
No, I think I got through. But yeah, I think like the thing for me now is just like you actually, just really continuing to decide every day that I want to give myself to the things of the Lord, and realizing that your like I said before, your life is worth way more than yourself, and it's actually, I guess for me, it's like a just daily decision of actually saying, Lord, no matter what the cost, this is what I want to give my life to. And like every day, like he just surprises me with all these things, and even just because I guess there's times where it's like you get home from work and you're like, oh, I really can't be bothered going out or seeing this person or doing this or doing that. I'm being honest, but like after you sort of like once you sort of remind yourself what it is that God wants, and that you actually feel like so satisfied because you know that you're doing the will of the Lord, and you know that you're actually setting your sight on the things of heaven, I guess, in a way where it's actually just you are storing treasures in heaven when you do those things. And so I think that's pretty much all I had to say. But yeah, I guess the thing is like for me, like I'd definitely like never go back. Well, I mean, it's a continuous decision, but never go back to like living for myself in regards to like what God can actually do and what God actually wants to do. And like I guess the thing I've learned is that to the degree that I give myself to that, to the degree that He'll do what He wants to do in me and do what He wants to do in those around me as well. So
That's good.
I'll leave it there.
Good, Jeremy. That was good.
Yeah.
Jeremy,
Paul.
there wasn't any repeats.
Really? That's good.
Now, Hannah, I really would like to, we could finish now, but I really would like Hannah to share because it completes the night. And for those that, this is where you're at, you're not really in discipleship, and you might be able to sort of give yourself lots of reasons why you're not. Oh, that's for young people, or that's for this, or that's for that, or I'm in this situation.
Or for example, I'm a bit busy at the moment.
Yeah. There could be lots of reasons, but Hannah's had her journey in these matters, as well as she's also watched other people go through the choice to open up and to connect or not, to embrace a certain lifestyle or to choose a different lifestyle. So it'd be really good to hear from you. We'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so my experiences with discipleship, I'll keep it brief because of time, but I want it to be quality, so bear with me. I came to a decision, a point in my life where I needed to make a decision whether or not to be effectively discipled or not. When I met Callie, that's when I had to make that decision. So I obviously did because I'm here.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why Callie?
Why Callie? Oh, I don't know. No, there's so much, honestly.
How did that connection develop, and why did you go that way?
Yeah. So the connection developed when another youth leader, I was talking with another youth leader. I was a youth leader, talking with another youth leader. And I was kind of complaining, like, oh, like, I'm not really being discipled. I kind of want it, blah, blah, blah. And she pointed out Callie, and she's like, oh, what about Callie? And I'm like, So I kind of observed Callie for a little while. I looked at her life. I looked at the characteristics that she had. And I decided, dang, they are godly. She is really expressing the Lord in her whole life. And that was just the tip of the iceberg, honestly. So I chose Callie in a way because, one, she was warm, we had a sort of connection, and I wanted to imitate her as she imitated the Lord. I wanted to look like her because she looked like Jesus. So that's why I chose Callie, and she chose me.
What gave you the sense she chose you?
Because I'm still here.
No, I mean, like, at the time.
Yeah, at the time. Probably,
I guess because I was looking for someone to guide me and to lead me. So at that point in time, and hopefully still, I was pliable. She could work with my heart because I gave her permission to. I let her work with my heart, no matter how uncomfortable it was sometimes.
Did she at any point step in, like step into your world in any way, or did you just step into hers?
I guess it's all interrelated and all interconnected. Like, she gets along well with my mother. I live with Callie now, so our life is very much enmeshed, very much life on life at the moment. So that has been the most beneficial thing in my life so far. And looking, in a way, comparing the choice I made and how that's affected my life, to say a really good friend of mine who also had the opportunity for a similar thing but chose not to. I think that gives a pretty accurate indication of what my life would have looked like if I did not choose to be discipled. If I chose to keep going my own way independently, with no sort of help or guidance, completely in isolation from someone else in a discipleship role, I think I would have been very stagnant. I would not have dealt with my identity. I still would have been very insecure. I would have, I guess, still been such a baby in the Lord. Like, I still am in some ways, but at least I'm on the way to maturity in God. Because he's been doing this ongoing work between Callie and I with, as Paul described it earlier, with, the hearts. I allowed my heart to be open to Callie, and she reciprocated with her heart also being open by sharing her life with me, and demonstrating what life with Jesus looks like. That's produced an ongoing life and an ongoing work that God has been doing in me through identity, through knowing him, even things like getting into the secret place. Like, I know how to do that now. Whereas before, if I had chosen to do this life on my own, I would have struggled big time. Yes. So, I think we've talked a lot about the benefits of discipleship. Can I touch on the barriers?
Yeah, yes, definitely. That's be good.
Cool, yeah. So, are you playing tug of war? That's a question I want to ask you. When the Lord and I were kind of figuring this out earlier, I got this image of playing tug of war. So I went through a period of my life where I was trying to disciple other young people, and it ended up we were playing tug of war, me on one end, holding on to them and praying really, really hard that they would come to know the Lord and that they would submit to him, and just really holding on to it. And they're on the other end, and they're holding their life, they're holding their will really closely to them, holding on to dear life. Like, this is mine, I'm not giving it up. Whereas I'm on the other end, and I'm tugging and I'm pleading and I'm, working really hard to help them see that they need the Lord. So we're doing this through catching up a lot and investing a lot of time. So I had to come to a point when I realized that I wanted them to be disciples and for them to know the Lord more than they wanted it, because they wanted to hold on to their life. They wanted to hold on to their will more than they wanted the Lord, to be honest. So the barriers that they may have experienced and the barriers that I know that I experienced to discipleship, the things that stopped me from engaging sooner, was a lot of insecurity, a lot of not thinking I was worth time, that I wasn't important, and a big thing was vulnerability. So discipleship, it takes vulnerability. You need to open up your life. You need to be, like, every area of your life needs to be exposed. There are things that Callie knows that not a lot of other people do about me. So it takes a lot of bravery and courage for that to happen. And I find that when, inch by inch, as I let go of my stuff, just to communicate it to Callie, it was easier to give it to the Lord then. It kind of worked out that way. Another big barrier was the cost that it has. Paul touched on it earlier with a cost to a sort of independence. Discipleship does cost you something. Not only your time and your resources or whatever, but it costs you your pride, and it costs you your life and a sort of control that you have over your life. It's a lot of laying that down and giving the Lord the opportunity to choose someone to come into your life and guide you gently but firmly and strongly into something that's higher. And Callie's constantly pulling me up into wisdom and into higher things and into worthier things. So they're the main barriers. And honestly, like each individual here, can you just assess in your life, like, what do you want? Like, do you want to keep playing tug of war? Do you want your life? Do you want your will? Do you want you? Or do you want to live a life that's completely abandoned to the Lord, that's going along side by side with someone else, with another human being? Because it's really hard to do it by yourself. And I would not suggest it or encourage it. I think it's really important to have someone who has your best interest at heart, because your best interest is for you to know the Lord and to walk towards the Lord, with the Lord. So be honest with yourself, be clear, be self-aware. What do you actually want? Is it worth it? You know, yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted me to touch on?
No, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. I think it's the barrier. Another barrier is actually ignorance. You were raised in something different. You didn't know that this was the case, and you didn't know this was God's way, and you didn't know the benefits, and it's been your blind spot. Well, then tonight might be really good for you to process, For some of you, if you're not in discipleship, I don't know if you joined the dots yet, but what we're presenting you is actually a choice. What do you want? Another barrier is a lack of spiritual desire. A lack of desire to be like the Lord, to follow closely to the Lord, to choose the higher road, the road less travelled. And you're sort of comfortable where you are. In other words, you don't truly want to grow spiritually. And you think you're going well, but it's a complete deception. You're not going well at all. And that's probably what the Lord needs to show you, that you're not going well at all. And you shouldn't kid yourself in thinking that people don't fall away. They do. They do. And the one thing that happens before a person falls away is a lack of spiritual desire. So you need to ask yourself this question: do you want to fall away from the Lord? Yes or no? And if you have a lack of spiritual desire and you know it, then you're not far away from it. You're just deceived, thinking that you're okay, but you're not. In that case, you need to decide whether you want to live in isolation and live alone and stay in your fracturedness, or whether you want a redemption that affects every area of your life. That's what the Lord wants for you. So it's really a choice to open your heart to the Lord and saying, Lord, whatever you want for my life, I want that. So if you want me in discipleship where I'm exposed and all my ugly parts get known, that's the passage to freedom. You stay in that prison and you'll be robbed of all the fruit of godliness and other people coming to know the Lord, and beautiful transformation and blessing flowing to all the people that you love and to your life in every area of your life. That is a high price to pay to stay in a prison of guilt and shame and fear. That is the choice to come out of it and be known and seen for who you are is a courageous one. But here's the truth. You only are what you are before God. You may as well let go of the illusion that you criticize other people for having and decide for once in your life to be real. I'm saying this is what you say to yourself. For once in my life, I want to be real, and I want to be known for who I am, with also the ugly parts. But you never do that with an unsafe person. Would you agree? You first detect love and acceptance and safety, and you'll find there'll always be godliness if those things are there. And there you go there. So I hope, Hannah put it well. Do you like hearing Jeremy grow? Do you like seeing people grow? Isn't it lovely? You know what I mean? And Hannah growing. It's like they're all growing now. I'm so excited. And it is a pure pleasure to see the Lord at work. And he loves this interconnectedness of journeying together into holiness and into godliness, you know. And we weren't meant to do it alone. You can't do it alone. So may God bless this to each person, that you might have some point of exposure where the Lord can do you good through this. Start talking to you about a blind spot, or about the potential of your life, and you dare to dream bigger, think greater. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So here's a question. Has the Lord touched on anything where in your heart he went there, and it had this tweak in your heart, and you felt a point of exposure, and you felt the hand of the Holy Spirit on your heart and says, yes, I want to talk to you about this? If, first of all, ask yourself the question, did he? If he did, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as they did in the wilderness. Respond to him. In some way, connect. Amen.